State Antony Blinken has been in Israel meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other ministers, more or less urging them to go easier on Gaza. Blinken claims that the civilian death toll is too high and that Israel must stop taking steps that undercut Palestinians' ability to govern themselves effectively, quote unquote. But of course, Gaza is governed by Hamas, a terrorist organisation. So when he talks about allowing them to govern effectively, what is he talking about? A two-state solution, as the US wants, would only work without Hamas. And the only way to get rid of Hamas is to wipe them off the face of the planet. Joining me now from Israel is author Douglas Murray. Douglas, a pleasure as always. What is Blinken actually trying to achieve here?
Good to be with you. It's a bit of a mystery in some ways, because the claim that he's making that there simply needs to be greater trust on both sides, as it were, in order to push for a two-state solution, and that it's within Israel's grasp to hand the Palestinian peoples in the West Bank and Gaza a sort of reputable social democratic government structure that allows them to thrive economically and socially. It's a complete fantasy. Everybody can see it's a fantasy, except it's certain people in the international arena who cling on to this very, very outdated model for dear life. There are very few people in Israel across the right or the left of politics who think that a two-state solution is remotely plausible at the moment. I don't think it's remotely plausible at the moment. I don't know if it ever will be, but it looks incredibly unlikely at the moment because, as you mentioned in your introduction, Hamas, Gaza became a kind of state. Every Jew was forcibly withdrawn from the Gaza. The authorities in Gaza were given everything of the structure that was there, including the economic structure. And for the next 18 years, Hamas were voted in, killed their Palestinian opponents, enriched themselves massively, bought Ferraris and luxury apartments for themselves and their children, kept the people in some relative poverty because they stole all the aid money and other things that went in and built a tunnel network instead of buildings. But, you know, all of that happened in what could have been a Gazan Palestinian state. And then after barrage of rockets over many years, finally we had the events of October the 7th last year and 3 months ago now. And that's what the Israelis got from a Palestinian state in Gaza. And why people like Blinken keep committing to the idea that Gaza could be socially democratically ruled at some point in the near future, if only the Israelis agreed to it, or that there's any similar alternative in the West Bank, I think is for the fairies. The West Bank, if it had an election tomorrow, would elect Hamas. It's the only good reason why Mahmoud Abbas is now into something like the 17th year of his 4-year term as head of the Palestinian Authority. Because if he was to have fresh elections, he'd be booted out, would probably be hanged from a lamppost by Hamas like his colleagues in Gaza. And that would be that. So it's simply a dead song, a dead myth, a dead piece of rhetoric that Blinken and others are now saying.
Yeah, and when you look at South Africa as well is now going after them through international courts for breaking genocide. Why we've come this far? Why would we now start trying to dictate to Israel? Oh, go a bit softer over here. I think we all know where that ends, and it's not in a good place.
By the way, South Africa. South Africa is a very, very, very anti-Israel country, and there's a very interesting reason for that, among other things, which is the South African government is so poor at running its own country. There are blackouts every day, electricity blackouts in major cities like Johannesburg. If you can't run your own country, you can always kind of bash Israel on the side as a way to excuse your own failings.
Yeah, if you can't run your own, tell someone else how to run theirs. Now, the last of the Jeffrey Epstein court documents have been unsealed today. And Virginia Giuffre, of course, who settled a court case with Prince Andrew, She has said in these unsealed documents that she had sex with another prince, and she said she saw Bill Clinton on Epstein's island twice, which he, of course, has emphatically denied. But now you have his brother, Mark Epstein, out questioning whether Jeffrey committed suicide when he was found dead in his jail cell in 2019. Mark told the New York Post, quote, "It seems like a cover-up. Why can't I find his pre-hospital care report? And why can't I get the 9/11 call?" Now, the CCTV cameras were off. The prison guards were asleep. He didn't have a cellmate. He'd been dead for 2 to 6 hours, according to the autopsy. The hospital staff weren't interviewed by police. No photo was taken of his body when it was found. I mean, Douglas, you can hardly blame his brother for asking questions about the circumstances in which Epstein died and who might have wanted him dead.
No, that's right. I mean, you don't have to be Jeffrey Epstein's brother to have question marks over the manner of Jeffrey Epstein's death. Everything about it was profoundly suspicious. The inquiry into it found, the prison inquiry found that it was just sort of multiple failings due to a systemic failure. I don't doubt at all there were plenty of systemic failings in the American prison system, as in most prison systems. But I think the idea that everything failed at once is something that stretches the credibility of a lot of people, myself included. As you mentioned, I mean, everything that could have gone wrong did. Everything that could have been in place to ensure that somebody noticed whatever was happening wasn't in place. And it is profoundly suspicious, I still think. But you mentioned at the beginning that this is the sort of the last cache of documents relating to Epstein. I don't know if it will be. I think there is a lot more to come. It's very interesting, this story, that there's this drip of information, mainly because of the free press pushing to get the information that is being withheld. It is extraordinary how little we know still about exactly who Epstein was meeting, why, and as I've been discussing recently, not least on our sister channel Talk, what was he himself actually doing? Who was Jeffrey Epstein? He clearly wasn't a financier. He clearly wasn't trading, because there's no record of the stock trades he was doing. He didn't behave like a financier, as my friend Eric Weinstein, among others, has pointed out. He seemed obviously to have been running some kind of compromising blackmail operation. And the question then is, was it for his own enrichment, own pleasure, or was it on behalf of some kind of intelligence agency? These are very, very big questions involving some of the world's most powerful people. And I think that we, the public, deserve to know. And it's a credit to the free press, like the New York Post, that it's papers and television channels and others that are pushing to get this information out there, because the public deserve to know.
100%. But of course, one of the problems is, with him not being alive, there's a lot of stuff we will probably never know, and that is most convenient for some people. And speaking of the New York Post, people, of course, can read your column over there. Douglas Murray, thank you so much for your time as always, mate.